Welcome back. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet Friday in what the White House is now calling a normal bilateral meeting. The highly anticipated meeting will happen Friday at the G20 Summit in Germany. Joining me now is Mike Morey, former communications director for Senator Chuck Schumer, and Rick Tyler, Republican strategist and an MSNBC political analyst. Welcome to you both on this holiday, and happy 4th
Happy 4th of July.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Mike, I'm going to start with you. So with President Trump and President Putin's first face-to-face meeting, do you think that the subject of Russian interference in U.S. elections is going to come up?
Well, it certainly should. One would think that the President of the United States, who just was involved in an election in which it's undeniable that the Russians tried to infiltrate, basically mess with our democracy, one would think if you're having a bilateral meeting...
One would think.
One would think. No, I don't. And in fact, the notion that the White House would be sort of articulating that there is no agenda for this meeting, well, here's a couple of ideas, Mr. President. Why don't you talk about hacking into U.S. elections? Why don't you talk about Russian support for Assad in Syria and the use of chemical weapons over there? There are a lot of things that you should be prepared to talk to Mr. Putin about, and the fact that you're going into this saying that you have no agenda, I think speaks volumes to the preparedness of this president and his willingness to sort of serve as a global leader like the United States has for a century.
Rick, reportedly Russia, they're kind of losing patience, and they want the U.S. to return its compounds. How do you think that the Trump administration is going to respond, and what does the Trump administration hope to gain from these meetings, you think?
Well, one, I hope they don't return to compounds. I don't think we've done enough to Russia to set a clear marker that they shouldn't not only be interfering with U.S. elections. Russia has been systematically interfering with the free nations of the world, not just in their elections, but buying foreign companies to cozy up to political leaders, to fake news. I mean, it's very systematic, and it's a lot cheaper than using weapons. And so Russia's at war with us. They're an enemy, and they're hostile. And the president needs to lay down the marker that we're going to be tough with Russia. And if he doesn't bring up interference in the 2016 election, he's going to convey to Putin that he's weak.
You know, it's interesting that you say, Rick, that we're at war with Russia, they are an enemy, because I can't help but think that whether or not the dynamics in their conversation, in their meeting, is going to reflect that.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I think it's fascinating that the president has set very high expectations. For instance, if you look at North Korea and his meeting with President Xi, that the Chinese were going to help us with North Korea, we can see nothing has happened there, but he sets the expectations very high. He also sets the expectations very high in the Middle East, that we're talking about peace in the Middle East through his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And then with this Russian meeting, he says there's no agenda. It's just a side meeting, get-to-know-you meeting, which the Russians announced yesterday that, oh, no, this is a bilateral meeting, and it carries the weight of a bilateral meeting. And since that is now true, the president needs to convey that the United States is not going to tolerate Russian interference in free democracies, including our own.
We know where the president stands on the Paris Climate Accord. Mm-hmm. We know where Angela Merkel stands on the Paris Climate Accord. Mm-hmm. She's for it. She's in it. Her country's in it. The U.S., not for it anymore. Not in it. How are they going to reconcile their differences? This is going to be a big sticking point at the G20. This is going to be a main topic of conversation. The president has said he wants to renegotiate, and everybody else is saying this is non-negotiable.
No, look, I mean, of course it's going to be a big topic. At the end of the day, the thing that everyone should be very concerned about, and I think Angela Merkel has been making this clear, and I think the Canadian Prime Minister is making this clear, and I think countries from Asia to the Middle East to Europe are making this clear. There is a vacuum of leadership that the United States of America has sort of filled for a century, and we are in a time now, an era when there is no leadership coming from the United States. We have a president who's unwilling to lead. We have nations who are asking for leadership, and in that vacuum, people are going to have to step up, or instability will reign. And I think that Angela Merkel should, and I think all the leaders in the G20 should, bring up to Donald Trump that you are the president of the United States. We have depended on you. You have been our ally. Where are you? Where's the leadership? And I find it very unfortunate that, particularly a Republican president in this day and age has decided that American exceptionalism is no longer the policy of the United States.
Rick, switching topics here and talking about the voter fraud investigation, more than 40 states have come out against the Trump administration request for specific voter information. Chris Kobach, the vice chair of the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity, he sent a letter to all 50 states and says that all of the voter data will eventually be made public. The reaction against this, it has been quick, it's been growing. Do you think, Rick, that the Trump administration here miscalculated when it came to this request?
Yeah, well, yes, because nobody wants to be facing headlines of 30-plus states have decided not to share the data. I think it's worth listeners understanding that most voter data in all the states is public, and you can get them. You either have to purchase it, but it's acquired. What we're talking about here is some of the appended data that states add, sometimes phone numbers, sometimes social security numbers, sometimes other data that these states don't want to release. I for one, do not like the idea of any federal agency collecting voter data from all the states. I think the voter data should stay in the hands of the individual states. I come from a federalist point of view on that. I don't like the idea of the federal government getting involved in voter elections. There's too much potential for mischief, and so let's keep it where it is. And part of the reason our electoral system is as safe as it is because states and counties and sometimes towns and precinct levels operate the data, which makes it very difficult to systemically corrupt the process.
All right, Rick Tyler, thank you. Mike Morey, we were just talking about your former boss. You should have been here earlier when we were talking healthcare. That would have been a good conversation. Thank you both for joining me. Happy 4th.